Nacer Bouhanni, Jasper Philipsen or Gianni Moscon are some of the current riders considered to be the bullies in the world peloton for their aggressiveness in the final meters or for the way they treat other rivals. But they are still little flowers of the field if we compare them with the real monsters of bullying in the history of cycling. We're talking, for example, about Super Mario Cipollini, Il Re Leone, an apparently nice and funny guy with his costumes and disguises, his James Bond movie looks, and his unrepeatable charisma with which women from half the planet have wet their sheets while watching the comical videos of this abusive delinquent trying to sell his bikes half naked in commercials at 4 o'clock in the morning. But Big Mario had grown up in the Del Tongo team of the mythical Giuseppe Saronni, rival of the Italian mafioso Francesco Moser, who had thugs like Palmiro Masciarelli or Giuseppe Valtepaszuelo, who, if necessary, threw rivals to the side of the road, or even threatened them in hotels before the races. In order to become the prime bully, Cipollini had to suffer dark episodes like the one that happened in the 1994 Vuelta a España, where his own teammate Adriano Baffi almost killed the winner of Gent-Wevelgem by throwing him against some barriers in a sprint finish in Salamanca. So Mario did what big bullies usually do, and he bought his own red train of thugs and sprinters so that he could be the dominant fast man finisher during his Seiko days. Perhaps his high point as a bully was in the Vuelta a España 2000. In the early stages of that edition, Cipollini was quite angry because world champion Oscar Freire had won 2 stages in the sprint, and the Italian didn't know how to lose gracefully. In one of those stages, Cipollini blamed the defeat on the humble veteran Spanish rider Francisco Cerezo, with whom he'd rubbed handlebars at the beginning of the stage, and whom he had already hit twice on the helmet during the stage. Cerezo had thrown him off balance, and Cipollini was so angry that after Freire collected his prize as stage winner, the Seiko rider tried to punch him like a boxer. The doped-up Cipollini then decided to take the law into his own hands, and at the start of the next day's stage, he punched and smashed in Cerezo's face, laughing at him and asking him if it hurt while the Spaniard rolled around on the ground with a face full of blood and pulp. Sabrina Landucci's abuser had already shown his fury in 2000, but it was the fruit of the impotence of no longer being the best sprinter in the world. Not until he paid his entire salary to Dr. Eufemiano Fuentes in order to fly in 2002. It was the fruit, in short, of his stupidity. Now, someone who carried the bully gene inside him was Lance Armstrong. From a young age, Lance's stepfather treated the promising young athlete like a caged animal, and so all that fury was transferred to the road. Once Lance started to get those yellow jerseys, he began to act like a bully towards members of his team, like his masseurs, Emma O'Reilly, or his doped-up teammate for so many years, Frankie Andreu, and his close-minded wife, Betsy. That alpha male personality was soon transferred towards his rivals, intimidating them and insulting them physically, as he did with Marco Pantani, or contacting his friends at the UCI to denounce doping in other teams, just as he did with Ivan Mayo's Euskaltel, or the phonak of his former Gregario and supposed friend, Tugboat Hamilton. If he was capable of betraying the people who'd helped him become number one, Lance was not afraid to humiliate anyone, including stoner Floyd Landis when he wanted to return to professional cycling. Instead, he rejected him as a doper when he had done exactly the same. In fact, to this day, Armstrong still hasn't forgiven Landis for being a whistleblower, someone who told all of Lance's dirty tricks and secrets. And this makes it clear that, although the years have passed and he now has a much lower profile, the Armstrong who would berate fans or journalists for calling him a doper, and they had all the reason in the world to do so, well, he was one of the biggest bullies in the history of cycling. But there have been bullies bigger than him in the history of professional cycling, especially if we go back to its beginnings. We're talking about the Pelissier brothers, small-town cattle ranchers who would later become cyclists and the greatest enemies of the director and creator of the Tour de France, Henri Desgranges. His namesake, Henri Pelissier, winner of the Tour in 1923, was always against him and defended the rights of cyclists using violence and aggression. He showed much the same attitude towards his wives, whom he abused, one of them committing suicide, and the other ended up killing him. But on the road, the real bully of the Pelissiers was the younger brother Charles, the guy who holds the record for stage victories in a Tour edition, with 8 wins in 1930. He had no problem in breaking away from a breakaway if there was a brawl breaking out in the peloton. He even lost that 1930 edition by stopping to hit other rivals with whom he'd quarrelled in the middle of a stage. He was undoubtedly a brawler and a madman. But there is a completely sane cyclist who is the biggest bully in the history of cycling. The legendary Bernard Hinault. He's called a badger and not exactly for being a nice guy. Even as a teenager, he'd ride his bike to school just to scare and beat up anyone who annoyed him. And he carried that streetwise philosophy into his epocha as a professional cyclist. Vindictive. You could say that. He had no problem calling Paris-Roubaix a shitty race, and that was after winning it. Or then he told a fan that the next time he forgets a pen for an autograph, don't forget your penis in your pants when you're out partying. He humiliated everyone who said he was washed up and finished after abandoning the 1980 Tour de France. And then he trashed all the journalists while crushing everyone at the Salonche World Championships. According to his teammate and rival, Laurent Fignon, when Hinault spoke, all the veteran riders ducked their heads and kept quiet. And they dare not laugh when Bernard made a joke either. Perhaps the badger's best-known bully moment occurred at the 1984 Paris-Nice, when, on the runaway descent of the Col de l'Espigulier, he ran into some nearby ship workers who were demonstrating to prevent the closure of the company and the loss of their jobs. Hinault saw his chances of victory dashed, and so he decided to crash into the workers, and then, without saying a word, he started punching the workers, simply because they'd screwed up his chances of victory in the race. And it wasn't the first time something like this happened. 6 years earlier, he'd punched a fan who criticised the Protestant attitude of Hinault. Like other cyclists, he was complaining about getting up early at 5 in the morning to perform the first part of those double sector stages, which were typical of those times. In other words, no matter whether you demonstrate, or he's the one demonstrating, if you ride past the bully Hinault on the wrong day, if you look at him in the wrong way, you'll suffer the consequences. To this day, the wielder of the winning vase on the Omari Sports podium is still capable of destroying all those who come within the vicinity of his domain. Bernard Hinault. As the French say, what a fucking legend.